Flight attendant slapped a black CEO on her own jet. 10 minutes later, she fires his entire team. Ma'am, first class isn't for people like you. The words sliced through the quiet cabin of Flight 982 from Atlanta to Seattle. Heads turned, phones tilted. In seat 2B, Dr. Aaliyah Monroe froze mid-motion, her boarding pass still in her hand. The flight attendant, Heather Collins, mid-30s, crisp uniform, eyes like polished glass, stood over her with that familiar blend of disbelief and disdain that every black traveler has seen at least once. Aaliyah exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. "This is my seat," she said. Her voice was soft, calm, the kind of calm that only comes from years of being underestimated. She'd been through this before in airports and boardrooms, even in the very hospitals she built. Heather didn't look at the ticket again. "You must have mixed up the row numbers," she said too loudly. "Coach is in the back." The man in 2A, a silver-haired consultant, cleared his throat. "Maybe she just doesn't understand how seat assignments work," he offered helpfully. A ripple of nervous laughter rolled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "Every flight, man, every flight." Aaliyah felt the heat rise under her skin, but didn't move. The polished wood of her briefcase pressed against her leg, a reminder of who she was, CEO of Monroe Biotech. 42 years old, the youngest black woman in Georgia to take a medical startup public. She'd flown private jets before, but tonight she'd chosen commercial, quietly, deliberately, to meet a partner in Seattle without the noise of her usual entourage. "Please, stand up," Heather said. "We'll sort it out outside the plane." Aaliyah tilted her head. "You're sure about that?" Heather blinked, startled by the steadiness in her tone. But she nodded anyway, and that was when a young black man across the aisle, college hoodie earbuds dangling, muttered, "Here we go again." He didn't record, not yet, but the phone in his lap was ready. Aaliyah rose, slowly smoothing her blazer. "Check your manifest," she said. "Seat 2B, Dr. Aaliyah Monroe." Heather's jaw tightened. "Lady, I don't care what name you typed in online. If you don't have proof, I do." Aaliyah cut in, opening the wallet in her hand. Inside, a platinum card caught the light, booked directly through Horizon's executive partner program. For a second, Heather's face flickered. Then she recovered. "Anyone can fake that," she said. "Security's on its way." The murmurs grew louder now. A woman in 3C shook her head. "It's 2025 and this is still happening," someone else whispered. "Why doesn't she just move?" Aaliyah sat back down. Her hands were still, her breathing even. She didn't need to fight. She needed witnesses. The cabin door opened. 2 ground officers stepped in, one of them already gripping a radio. "What's the problem?" the taller one asked. Heather pointed, passenger refusing to comply. "Wrong seat!" The officer looked at Aaliyah. "Ma'am, may I see your ID?" She handed it over without hesitation. "And my boarding pass. You'll want to scan that twice." He did. Once. Twice. Then frowned. "It says executive tier, lifetime member." Heather's face drained of color. "That can't be right," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. Aaliyah didn't gloat. She simply opened her phone, tapped once, and sent a message to her assistant file incident report. "Include timestamp and crew names." "Is there a problem now?" she asked quietly. Heather didn't answer. The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you're good to stay?" Aaliyah smiled faintly. "I know." As she buckled her seatbelt, the young man across the aisle whispered, "You handled that smooth, sis." "Just another day," she said. 10 minutes later, while the engines hummed and the last passenger boarded, Aaliyah's assistant texted back, corporate already notified. The flight crew's under review. Heather walked past without meeting her eyes. The same hands that had pointed her toward the exit now trembled as she adjusted the overhead bins. Aaliyah looked out the window, the night lights of Atlanta fading below. Her reflection in the glass was calm, steady, unshaken. She thought of her grandmother who'd once said, They'll try to make you prove you belong in rooms you built yourself. She smiled almost sadly. Not tonight. Somewhere near row 5, the young man finally hit record, not out of anger, but out of pride. The camera caught her silhouette against the window, the quiet strength of a woman who had nothing left to prove. And for every black traveler watching that clip later, it wasn't just a story about a plane. It was about staying seated when the world keeps trying to move you to the back. Heather's voice cut through the intercom before anyone could settle. Flight attendants, prepare for departure. We'll be making up some time in the air. Her tone was tight, shaky. Everyone in first class felt it. The young black man in row 3 glanced over his shoulder again, phone still half hidden in his palm. He wasn't the only one watching now. People sensed tension, the kind that hums just below polite silence. Dr. Aaliyah Monroe kept her eyes on the window. The city lights of Atlanta shimmered beneath the wing as the aircraft began taxiing. She felt the vibration of the wheels through her seat, but also the subtle burn of humiliation still clinging to her skin. She'd endured worse. Boardrooms full of men who talked over her, investors who called her sweetheart before realizing she signed their checks. Still being told she didn't belong again hit something deeper than pride. Heather passed by briskly with the beverage cart, refusing to meet Aaliyah's eyes. She poured champagne for the man in 2A. "Can I get you something else, sir?" she asked, smiling like nothing had happened. He nodded toward Aaliyah. Maybe she could use a drink calm her nerves. Heather gave a small laugh. "I'm sure she's fine." A few passengers chuckled. Aaliyah didn't look up. Her hands rested lightly on her lap nails, short and clean. When the cart rolled closer, Heather's tone flattened. "Water." "No, thank you," Aaliyah said. Her voice was even, but her silence carried weight. She could feel the young man's phone aimed at her again, could sense eyes on her from every row. Public humiliation had become theater. People didn't look away anymore, they recorded, commented, shared. She could almost hear the captions being written in real time. Angry black woman refuses to move. Her phone buzzed in her palm. A message from her assistant, footage already circulating. "We're monitoring hashtags." Of course it was. Even before takeoff, the story had legs. That was the world. Now power lived in perception. Aaliyah had learned to use that truth. As the plane climbed, the hum of the engines deepened. Heather moved between rows, offering peanuts and smiles. When she reached Aaliyah's seat again, she hesitated. Maybe guilt, maybe stubbornness, it was hard to tell. "Everything all right, ma'am?" Aaliyah looked up slowly. "Depends who you're asking." Heather's cheeks flushed. "I'm just trying to make sure you're comfortable." "You've done enough," Aaliyah said softly. It wasn't loud, but the edge in her tone silenced the entire cabin for a beat. Even the businessman in 2A shifted uncomfortably, pretending to read his tablet. Then came the turbulence, not outside but inside the plane. Whisper threads, low murmurs, people debating under their breath. She's overreacting. No, that attendant was out of line. "Why does it always have to be about race?" Aaliyah didn't respond. She'd heard every version of that argument since college. The constant tug of war between reality and denial. Heather disappeared behind the curtain to the galley. A moment later, another attendant. Megan, a younger woman with kind eyes, appeared beside Aaliyah. "Dr. Monroe, may I offer you something to eat? Maybe a blanket?" Aaliyah smiled faintly. "I'm good. Thank you." Megan hesitated, then whispered, "I saw what happened at boarding. That wasn't right." Aaliyah met her gaze. "Thank you for saying that." Megan nodded and slipped away. But that small acknowledgement shifted something in the air. A few heads turned toward Aaliyah with new awareness. Shame moved through the rows like static. 20 minutes later, a different voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We've been informed of a minor delay in arrival due to weather patterns over Kansas. Estimated landing 9:12 p.m. But everyone knew that wasn't the delay they were feeling." Aaliyah's phone buzzed again. Another message from her assistant board chair saw the clip. He's requesting a statement when you land. Her reflection in the window showed the same calm expression, but her pulse quickened. She wasn't angry now, she was calculating. Heather emerged from the galley again, pretending to tidy the aisles. Her eyes darted toward Aaliyah, then away. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was charged heavy with unspoken reckoning. In row 3, the young man whispered to his friend, "Yo, that's Dr. Monroe, the biotech lady. She's on Forbes." His friend frowned. "No way. Look it up." A few taps later, whispers turned into ripples. Screens glowed with her face, news headlines, photos from conferences. The energy in the cabin shifted. What had been mockery became unease. The businessman in 2A cleared his throat. "Dr. Monroe, I apologize for earlier." Aaliyah turned her head slightly. "For which part?" He blinked. I didn't realize who you were." "That's the problem," she said quietly. Heather stopped mid-step, frozen. The young man's phone caught every word. 30 minutes into the flight, Aaliyah opened her tablet and began typing notes for her statement, not to defend herself, but to redefine the moment. Her fingers moved fast, deliberate. Each word would matter. When she looked up again, the seatbelt sign flicked on. Lightning flashed outside the window, brief and brilliant. Heather steadied herself against the aisle. Their eyes met for the first time since the gate. Aaliyah didn't speak. She didn't need to. Heather looked away first. By the time they broke through the storm clouds, the entire cabin had fallen silent. No laughter, no whispers, just the hum of an engine carrying 70 people through the dark, each of them knowing they'd witnessed something bigger than a seat dispute. Aaliyah leaned back, closed her eyes, and let the weight of it all settle, not as anger, but as resolve. The night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The rain hit the windows in streaks as Flight 982 sliced through the night sky. Cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, but the tension hadn't faded. It hovered like static, quiet, heavy alive. Dr. Aaliyah Monroe sat still in seat 2B, her hands folded loosely on her lap. On the screen in front of her, the flight map showed their path somewhere over Kansas, 2 hours from Seattle. Her reflection flickered against the dark window, calm and unreadable. She'd spent a lifetime perfecting that expression. Across the aisle, Heather moved with mechanical precision, serving coffee-collecting cups, pretending nothing had happened. Every few minutes, she'd steal a glance at Aaliyah, quick, nervous, afraid of what she might see looking back. She didn't see rage. She saw quiet power. The young man from row 3 was still recording subtle clips on his phone. His live stream chat scrolled with comments, "That's Dr. Monroe for real. She owns half that airline's medical supply chain." This is about to get real interesting. Aaliyah wasn't watching, but she knew. The internet had already done its thing. Every second she sat there in silence, her story was rewriting itself online. When the seatbelt sign chimed off, Heather exhaled a shaky breath and reached for her tablet. She started typing something, probably a report to the captain. Then she hesitated, looked back at Aaliyah, and walked toward the cockpit instead. Moments later, the intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reeves. We're experiencing some turbulence ahead, but nothing serious. Please remain seated for now." But inside that cabin, the storm wasn't outside. It was brewing at 30,000 feet. Heather reappeared a minute later, her cheeks flushed. "Dr. Monroe," she said quietly, "the captain would like a word." Aaliyah looked up from her tablet. "Now, yes, ma'am, if you'd follow me." The passengers turned as she stood. No one said a word. She walked calmly past them, heels clicking against the aisle floor, the silence of judgment pressing against her shoulders. When she reached the cockpit door, the captain was waiting. His expression was practiced neutrality, the kind that said, "I know there's a problem, but I'm not sure how to fix it." "Dr. Monroe," he said, "I understand there was some confusion earlier." She raised an eyebrow. "Confusion implies no one had a choice, Captain. Your crew made very specific choices." He shifted uncomfortably. I wasn't aware of the details until just now. My flight attendant accused me of lying, tried to remove me from a seat I purchased, and called security she finished for him. That's not confusion. That's discrimination. Heather's face reddened. Ma'am, I didn't mean... You meant every word, Aaliyah said evenly. And the internet heard them all. The captain cleared his throat. Dr. Monroe, please understand we take these matters very seriously. Good, Aaliyah replied. Because so does the Federal Aviation Board, and so does Horizon Airlines, whose medical division she paused just long enough to let the words land happens to be under my company's contract. Heather blinked. Wait, your company? Aaliyah nodded once. Monroe Biotech. We handle your in-flight emergency kits, oxygen systems, and defibrillator maintenance. Maybe that's what you meant when you said people like me don't belong in first class. The captain's eyes widened. Dr. Monroe. She held up a hand. Save it. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. But when we land, you'll contact your regional director. He'll already have my report. The words weren't loud, but they landed like thunder. Heather's lips parted, searching for something, an apology, an excuse. But nothing came. For the first time, all flight, she had nothing to say. Aaliyah turned to go, then stopped in the doorway. You should know, she said softly, your passenger safety training doesn't just cover emergencies in the air. It covers equality and respect. You failed both tonight. Then she walked back down the aisle, her stride slow and unhurried. The eyes that followed her now weren't judging, they were reverent. The businessman in 2A looked down, ashamed. The young man in row 3 lowered his phone. When she sat again, Megan, the younger attendant, approached quietly with a warm towel and a glass of sparkling water. Dr. Monroe, she said, I'm sorry for what happened. Aaliyah took the glass, nodded. Thank you, Megan. You didn't cause it, but you can help change it. As Megan walked away, the cabin felt lighter. The whispers stopped. For the first time that night, Aaliyah breathed fully. Her phone buzzed one more time. A message from her assistant lit the screen. Video hit 1.2 million views. Corporate already responding. Horizon's CEO wants to meet tomorrow morning. Aaliyah smiled faintly. Of course he does. Outside, lightning flared again, illuminating the wing against the clouds. But inside, there was calm, the kind that follows a storm that's already chosen its side. Heather stayed near the galley, pretending to organize cups she'd already stacked. Her hands trembled. She knew her shift was ending long before the plane touched down. And Aaliyah. She didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. She just sat there watching the sky, letting the hum of the engines carry her forward. Justice didn't always shout. Sometimes it just took its seat back in silence and refused to move. The wheels hit the Seattle runway with a thud that jolted everyone forward. Aaliyah opened her eyes just as the lights brightened, washing the cabin in a sterile white glow. The intercom crackled. Welcome to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Local time is 9:17 p.m. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. It was the same message as every other flight, but tonight it felt different, like the world outside that door wasn't quite the same as the one she'd boarded back in Atlanta. Heather stood near the galley, straightening her jacket, trying to look composed. Her hands still trembled as she stacked cups that didn't need stacking. Megan whispered something to her, but Heather didn't respond. The silence between them said enough. Aaliyah powered on her phone. It exploded with notifications, missed calls, messages, news alerts. Her assistant's text sat at the top, PR, already spinning this. Corporate demanding full crew list. Another message followed seconds later. Do you want me to hold tomorrow's investor briefing? She typed back. No. We'll move forward as planned. When the seatbelt light finally went off, half the cabin shot to their feet. Bags tumbled from the overhead bins. Heather forced her professional smile back into place. Thank you for flying, Horizon Air, she said mechanically. We hope to see you again soon. But no one met her eyes. The businessman in 2A waited as Aaliyah stood. "Dr. Monroe," he said quietly, "I truly am sorry." "I didn't realize." She turned to him, her expression calm but firm. "You didn't have to realize who I was to treat me right," she said. "You just had to be decent." He looked down. "You're right. I know." She stepped into the aisle, her heels clicking softly against the floor, the sound echoing like punctuation marks to the end of the longest flight of her life. As she reached the exit, Heather tried to speak. "Dr. Monroe." If I could just, Aaliyah didn't slow. "Don't explain. Learn." Outside the jet bridge, 2 Horizon executives in Navy suits were waiting, faces tight with urgency. The older one extended a hand. "Dr. Monroe, I'm so sorry for what you've experienced. We've been informed of the incident." "I'm sure you have," she said, shaking his hand briefly. "You'll be hearing from my office tomorrow." The younger exec swallowed. "Corporate has already suspended the involved employees pending review." Aaliyah glanced toward the aircraft door, where Heather now stood pale and motionless, her headset limp at her side. Their eyes met one final wordless exchange. Aaliyah's gaze was steady. "Actions have consequences. You taught that lesson better than you think." She walked away before Heather could respond. The executives trailed behind her as they moved toward the private arrivals lounge, where a black SUV idled at the curb. The air smelled of rain and jet fuel. Cameras flashed in the distance. Someone had leaked her arrival time. Aaliyah didn't mind. For once, she wanted this scene. Inside the lounge, her assistant Camille was waiting, tablet in hand. "It's already everywhere," Camille said. "Twitter, TikTok, news outlets. They're calling it the Monroe flight." Aaliyah exhaled slowly, lowering herself into a leather chair. "Let them. It's time some people see what flying while black still looks like in 2025. Camille nodded. "The board's on your side." The chairman texted personally. "They want you to lead the internal ethics review." Aaliyah smirked. "I was planning to anyway." A knock came at the lounge door. The older executive stepped in again, looking pale. "Dr. Monroe, we've spoken with corporate. They're requesting your decision on the crew's employment status. It's your right under the executive partnership clause." Aaliyah studied him for a moment. Outside, lightning flashed against the glass, briefly illuminating her reflection. She looked tired, but composed, exactly the kind of woman who didn't raise her voice to get justice. She set her glass down. "Fire the entire crew assigned to Flight 982. Effective immediately." The man blinked. "All of them?" "Yes," she said simply. "And schedule retraining for everyone who wears that uniform. Next time, teach them what first class really means." He nodded stiffly and left the room. Camille raised an eyebrow. "That's going to hit the headlines by morning, I know," Aaliyah said. "Good. Maybe then someone will think twice before they measure a person's worth by their skin or seat number." Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Dr. Monroe speaking." A deep male voice replied, calm but strained. "This is Robert Lane, CEO of Horizon Air. I wanted to personally apologize." "I don't need apologies," she said, her tone flat. "I need accountability. And you'll start with your diversity and bias training programs. My team will send you new protocols by Monday." He hesitated. Understood. When the call ended, Aaliyah leaned back, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. Outside the lounge window, the rain had stopped. Camille handed her a folder. "Your driver's ready." Aaliyah stood gathering her coat. "It's funny," she murmured half to herself. "They thought they were putting me in my place. Turns out they were already sitting in mine." Camille smiled. "So, what now?" Aaliyah looked toward the night sky beyond the glass, her reflection merging with the storm clouds, fading into calm. "Now," she said quietly, "now we rebuild something better." As she walked toward the exit, cameras flashed again. But this time, the story wasn't about humiliation. It was about grace, justice, and the quiet power of a woman who refused to move because the world needed to move for her. Hi, friend. Before we continue, I need your help. We've noticed the channel losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and helps us keep delivering great content for you. Your support means everything. Comment your city or country below. Let's see how far this community reaches. Thank you. Now, back to the story. By sunrise, Seattle's sky had turned silver and quiet, the kind of cold morning that made the city feel suspended between rain and light. Inside the Four Seasons boardroom overlooking Elliott Bay, Dr. Aaliyah Monroe stood at the head of a long oak table, her phone face down beside a stack of folders. The room buzzed softly, with the hum of power executives, lawyers, PR advisors, each one waiting for her to speak. She didn't rush. Power never had to. Camille slid a tablet across the table. The official report came in an hour ago, she said. Videos hit 6.8 million views overnight. CNN and The Atlantic are requesting interviews. Hashtag First Class While Black is trending at number 3 nationwide. Aaliyah nodded slightly, her gaze fixed on the rain streaking the window. And Horizon's response. They issued a formal apology at 6 a.m., Camille said. They're offering to fund a partnership with the Monroe Foundation training programs, scholarships, community grants. Aaliyah turned her expression unreadable. They're not offering. They're atoning. The PR director across from her, young, nervous White, cleared his throat. Dr. Monroe, this could be huge for your brand. You'd become the face of reform in the airline industry. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. I didn't survive medical school, build a biotech company, and change hospital policy just to become a brand. This isn't a photo op. It's about respect. The man sank back into his chair. Silence reclaimed the room. Aaliyah reached for her phone, unlocking it with a thumbprint. The top notification glowed. Crew termination confirmed, 02:37 a.m. Beneath it, an email from Horizon's CEO. Thank you for your leadership. We will comply fully with your directives. She read it. Once then set the phone aside. Let's finalize the press statement, she said. No bitterness, no vengeance, just truth. Camille tapped quickly on her tablet. You want to lead with your quote? Aaliyah nodded. Say this. When respect is denied at 30,000 feet, it's not about altitude, it's about attitude. Change doesn't start in the air, it starts on the ground. The room went still. Every person there knew they'd just heard the soundbite that would headline morning shows. One of the lawyers leaned forward. Dr. Monroe, the employees involved, do you want to pursue legal action? Aaliyah thought for a moment, then shook her head. No. Let them live with what they've done. Losing their jobs will hurt, but losing the illusion that they were better than someone else, that's what will change them. Camille smiled softly. That's very you, Aaliyah smirked. Professional grace. My grandmother taught me that. Never raise your hand when your mind can do more damage. The group chuckled lightly, tension finally breaking. At 9:02 a.m., Aaliyah stepped out of the hotel into the brisk Seattle wind. Reporters swarmed the sidewalk cameras, flashing voices overlapping. Dr. Monroe, can you comment on last night's incident? Do you forgive the flight crew? Are you planning legal action? She stopped at the curb, composed as ever. I don't need revenge, she said, her tone even, but strong. I just want accountability. For me, and for everyone who's ever been told they didn't belong where they earned the right to be. Click, flash, silence. Then applause from somewhere in the small crowd behind the barricades. A young black woman, airport worker uniform still on, clapped slowly, tears streaking her face. Thank you, she whispered. You did that for all of us. Aaliyah met her eyes and smiled. No, she said softly. I did it with you. Back in the car, Camille handed her a tablet showing the live coverage. You're trending again. People are calling it the seat that changed the sky. Aaliyah laughed quietly. That's dramatic. True, though, Camille said. They're talking about new legislation mandatory anti-bias training for airlines. Some senators are already tweeting. The SUV merged onto the highway, the skyline fading behind them. Aaliyah gazed out the window, her reflection layered over the moving clouds. "Funny," she murmured. "They wanted me off that plane so bad, but all they did was make sure everyone else had to sit with what they did." Camille grinned, and now, Aaliyah said. Adjusting her coat, "We build something bigger. A flight academy for black youth. A leadership fund for women in aviation. If they're going to talk about us in the sky, let's make sure we own it." By the time they reached her office downtown, the rain had cleared. The sun broke through just enough to light the city's glass towers in gold. Inside the lobby, a receptionist smiled nervously. "Dr. Monroe? We saw you on the news. You handled that with so much class." Aaliyah returned the smile. "Class," she said softly, "isn't about where you sit. It's about how you stand." As she walked toward the elevator, her heels echoed against the marble, steady, deliberate, unstoppable. The doors closed, her reflection splitting into twin images on the mirrored walls, one of the woman they humiliated, and one of the woman they created by doing so. And somewhere above, another flight took off into the clouds, its engines roaring like a reminder even in turbulence. Dignity always flies higher. That evening, Seattle shimmered in gold under the late sunset. The storm that had followed Aaliyah since Atlanta had finally broken, leaving behind skies washed clean and streets glistening with light. From the top floor of Monroe Biotech's glass headquarters, the view stretched wide, harbor lights flickering like small constellations below. Inside, a small team gathered around the conference table. They weren't board members this time. They were employees, scientists, interns, and young engineers. Every face was turned toward Aaliyah as she stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the fading day. "I know some of you saw the video," she began. Her voice was calm, but carried the quiet weight of authority. "Some of you lived moments like it yourselves. Maybe not on a plane, but in meetings, in interviews, in classrooms where you were the only one who looked like you." A few heads nodded. Someone murmured, "Yes, ma'am." Aaliyah smiled faintly. "I want you to remember something. Every time someone tries to shrink your space, they're really showing you how big you are." The room fell silent. That kind of silence that feels like agreement without words. She turned toward the screen behind her. A logo glowed, the Monroe Flight Initiative. Underneath it, a tagline read, "Building Futures Above the Clouds." "This," she said, pointing to the screen, "is where the story turns." Camille stepped forward, tablet in hand. "The first program launches next month," she said. "Scholarships for black pilots, engineers, and flight attendants. Leadership training. We've already got backing from 2 major airlines and 3 universities." Someone in the back clapped softly. The sound spread 1, then 2, then the whole room. Aaliyah raised a hand. "Don't clap for me," she said gently. "Clap for the fact that next time someone like Heather thinks we don't belong in first class, there'll be thousands of us sitting there on both sides of the aisle." The room erupted again, this time in laughter mixed with pride. Later, when the others had gone and the building grew quiet, Aaliyah remained by the window. Her reflection in the glass looked almost like her mother's, same calm eyes, same spine of steel. She could still hear her grandmother's voice, soft and steady from years ago. "Baby, when they try to move you out of place, plant your feet deeper. You ain't standing alone." Her phone buzzed. A new message, unknown number. She hesitated before opening it. "Dr. Monroe, this is Heather Collins. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I'm taking bias training and volunteering with the Flight Academy in Atlanta. I'm trying to do better." Aaliyah stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed 2 words, "Do better." She didn't send it right away. She looked out at the bay again, watching a plane ascend through the clouds, a trail of light cutting through the dusk. Then she pressed send. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. It was something stronger, accountability. Camille returned with 2 cups of coffee. "You're still here?" "Always." Aaliyah said, taking one. "Big days don't end at 5 o'clock." Camille smiled. "You've got an interview with ABC in the morning. They want to talk about what you called quiet power." Aaliyah laughed softly. "That's what we do, isn't it? Change the world without shouting." They sat for a moment in companionable silence, the city glowing beneath them. Camille Aaliyah said after a while, "Do you ever think about how fast everything changes?" "Yesterday, I was just a passenger on a plane. Today I'm rewriting an industry." Camille shrugged, smiling. "Some people ride turbulence. Some people become it." Aaliyah chuckled. "I'll take that." Her phone pinged again, this time a video notification. Someone had clipped her quote from the press conference. "Change doesn't start in the air, it starts on the ground." The comment section was flooded with messages, Black travelers sharing their own stories, flight attendants pledging reform, kids posting selfies with the hashtag #Seat2B. Aaliyah watched quietly as the views climbed. 500,000, 800,000, a million. For the first time since that flight, she felt something ease inside her. It wasn't relief, it was purpose, settling into its rightful place. She turned back toward the night, lifting her cup slightly, almost like a toast. "Here's to flying higher," she said under her breath. Camille grinned, and never letting them downgrade us again. The 2 women laughed as another plane streaked across the sky, leaving a silver trail behind it, bright, unbroken, unstoppable. Down below, in homes across the country, people were watching her story unfold. Not as tragedy, not as outrage, but as testimony, proof that dignity, when held long enough, becomes something stronger than power. It becomes movement. And for every Black traveler who'd ever been told to move to the back, Aaliyah Monroe had just rewritten the flight plan. Morning light spilled across the skyline like a slow promise. Seattle was waking up, and so was the rest of America, phones buzzing, news anchors, talking people replaying the same video that had started it all, a Black woman staying seated when the world told her to move. Inside her office, Dr. Aaliyah Monroe stood by the window again, barefoot this time, coffee in hand, the city glowing below. She'd been up since 5, reading emails from strangers, pilots, nurses, students, mothers, each one saying the same thing in their own way. "You made me feel seen." Her assistant, Camille, walked in holding a folder. "You've got Good Morning America at 9. They want to focus on leadership and grace under pressure." Aaliyah chuckled softly. "Grace? Under pressure?" she repeated. That's just code for she didn't lose her cool while being disrespected. Camille smiled. "Maybe. But they need to hear it from you anyway." Aaliyah nodded. She understood now what started on that flight wasn't just about her. It was about the millions who watched, who'd felt that same sting and swallowed it to survive. The flight had become a mirror, and she'd just happened to hold it steady long enough for everyone else to see themselves in it. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from her mother in Atlanta. "Baby, you made us proud, but promise me one thing. Don't let the applause distract you from the work." Aaliyah smiled. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered to the empty room. At 8:45, she and Camille stepped into the elevator. The mirrored walls reflected more than their faces. It reflected the calm before another kind of storm, one made of microphones and flashing lights. Downstairs, the driver opened the door to a waiting car. Reporters lined the sidewalk, calling her name, asking questions. "Dr. Monroe, what message do you have for young Black women watching this? Do you forgive the flight crew?" She paused before getting in, looked directly into one of the cameras and said, "This isn't about revenge. It's about reflection. If you saw yourself in me, then use that. Use your voice, your space, your dignity, because it's yours." Then she stepped into the car and shut the door. As the city blurred past outside, Camille looked over. "You know they'll make movies about this someday." Aaliyah laughed. "They always make movies. I just hope they keep the part where I stayed calm." "Why?" Camille asked. Because that's the lesson Aaliyah said. You don't have to yell to change the room. Sometimes silence speaks louder when it's backed by truth. She turned her gaze back to the window. The sky stretched wide and blue, a few planes carving white lines through the morning. She thought about all the people boarding right now, business travelers, students, families, and wondered if maybe, just maybe, the next black woman who sat in first class wouldn't have to prove she belonged there. When the car stopped at the studio entrance, Aaliyah exhaled, squared her shoulders and smiled. Not the polite kind, but the grounded one, the smile of someone who had carried the weight, dropped it, and built something better from the wreckage. She stepped out into the crowd, flashbulbs bursting like fireworks. A voice called out Dr. Monroe. "Any last words for your followers?" She turned her tone warm but firm. "Yeah," she said. "Stay seated in your truth. No matter how high they fly, remember you were built to soar." Then she looked straight into the camera eye's steady voice, smooth as velvet. If you believe every black story deserves to be heard, subscribe, share, and keep watching, because this isn't the end. It's just takeoff. The camera light blinked red. The feed cut to commercial. Outside, another plane lifted off, streaking across the sky as sunlight caught its wings. And for everyone watching from their phones, buses, or break rooms across America, that image meant something new now. It wasn't just about a seat on a plane. It was about taking your place in the world and never letting anyone tell you to move again.